Good morning and a very warm welcome to the Asian College of Journalism. This is a part of the series of colloquia or colloquiums that we do on important issues that are impinging in our day and time. And we were very happy this time to be collaborating with India Justice Report, who had, in fact, initiated this idea of a colloquium on the theme that we are addressing today. And I'm grateful at the outset to Mr. Wale Singh, lead of the India Justice Report, and Ms. Maja Daruwala, chief editor, India Justice Report, who's here with us. I had initially thought I'll just spend a couple of minutes doing the welcome, but as some, shall we say, pleasant developments have overtaken us, I thought I'll allude to them. It was by no means timed that our colloquium will take place 2 days after the Supreme Court delivers, I think, a fairly historic judgment in the context of the theme that we are speaking to today about caste discrimination operating in prisons. What is of particular interest to us is that the petitioner who brought this about is Sukanya Shanta, whose 2020 report, From Segregation to Labor, Manu's Caste Laws Govern the Indian Prison System, which was, I think, taken very seriously by the Supreme Court. In fact, the Chief Justice, Honorable Chief Justice himself, calls it a beautifully researched piece and goes on to thank Sukanya Shanta for, to quote him, writing that well-written piece. It highlights the power of citizens. They write well-researched articles and lead the matters to the court. We have some locus in this, or rather some reflected glory in this, if you like, because this particular piece by Sukanya Shanta was the winner of the K.P. Narayana Kumar Award for Social Impact Journalism of 2021. This award is one of the 3 journalism awards instituted by the Asian College of Journalism every year, and this award in 2020 was won by Sukanya Shanta. So it's very gratifying that we are holding this colloquium in the light of this historic judgment. We are also very happy that we have 2 very distinguished judges whom we have admired from outside, and one of them is already with us. That is Justice Mukta Gupta, and the other Justice S. Muralidhar will be joining us very shortly. And I'd like to, first of all, extend a very hearty welcome both to Justice Mukta and Gupta and Justice Muralidhar, who will be joining us very shortly. Let me also welcome, apart from Ms. Maja Daruwala, Dr. Vijay Raghavan, who is Professor, Center for Criminology and Justice, School of Social Work, TIS, and Director, Prayas, Mumbai, who will be participating in the second session. He'll be introducing the speaker and chairing the second session. Let me also welcome Dr. Murali Karnam, Professor of Human Rights and the Director of Access to Justice Program, Nalsar, Hyderabad, who will be participating in the third session. And of course, all the other participants, students of the ACJ. I believe there's a good contingent come from the Chettinad Law College. If they're not already here, I'm sure they will be joining us soon. We also have students who said they're coming in from Stella Maris College, and perhaps other colleges to whom we had written, informing them about this colloquium and inviting them to join us. As we know, Justice Chandru, who is a well-wisher of this college and in fact visits us often and has in fact run a course on media law and society years back at this college, was happy to be here but sends his message that he's in Cochin and therefore not able to join us. The subject of our discussion is of particular interest because you know that he headed the one-man commission instituted by the Tamil Nadu government to go into the correctional homes, the observation centers for youth in Tamil Nadu, and has submitted a comprehensive report. When we think about what's going on in the prisons in India, I'm not going to preempt anything that's going to come after me here, I mean, by domain experts here. But we know that the situation is very bleak. In fact, that it took us, a petitioner, and this time, and so late in the day to discover that there's caste discrimination operating on a daily basis in prisons is itself a telling comment on how remote from our consciousness, or how tucked away, or how hidden, or how out there in the limbo this whole prison system of India is. As of at least according to the National Crime Records Bureau, as of December 2022, supposedly 5,73,220 prisoners in India, and of which a shocking more than 75% are under trials. So that gives you an introductory shocking insight into the way the prison system, or how and why people are there. Our idea of prisons has, at least in my generation, been one where people came to age politically. You know, you've heard of Nehru's discovery of India, letters to his daughter Indira Gandhi, all written from prisons. And prisons therefore acquired a kind of intellectual, elevated space in one's mind. This is where you developed your personality and acquired enlightenment of sorts. Or you found that, of course, in India's independent struggle, if you didn't go to prison, you were not a good enough freedom fighter. I mean, everyone went to prison. From which prisons and the way prisons are structured, much of those colonial era laws continue to be in force. And I'm sure all of these and more will be discussed in the course of this colloquium. Purely serendipitously, again, I was reading something about Brazil the other day and found a reference to Lula, current president of Brazil, who, as you know, in 2022 spent time in prison on charges of corruption and money laundering, but then he was released because the Supreme Court ruled out not just him but 5,000 other prisoners, because they said unless they've exhausted all their appeal rights across the higher courts, they could not be held in jail. I wonder whether that could be made applicable in India at any point in time. But what was interesting is that according to that system, for every book that you read in prison, you got a remission in your sentence, it's like good behavior or something. So, and that added up to quite a lot, although there's a ceiling. Although, of course, Lula he waived that right to remission of a sentence because in the first place he thought his conviction was wrong. So this is a bright side of what prisons can do, perhaps, make you more well-read, starting with writing from prison to reading in prison. But I'm afraid what we'll be directing our attention to in the course of this colloquium, certainly the need of the time, is the underbelly, the seamier side of what happens behind those bars. So I wish all of you a very illuminating, shall we say, day, and I'm thankful again to the experts who have come to speak to us, and particularly to the India Justice Report team for putting this together. In fact, all of this was arranged by them. We're just hosting the event, and I'm sure we will be richer for the experience by the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you to the Asian College of Journalism, and for our very learned judges, and our experienced and very passionate teachers who are going to be talking in this colloquium. We have two of some of the best teachers on the issue of prisons here. So really, you will have that as a rare opportunity. I am particularly happy to welcome the audience because you are an audience of citizens with power. You are an audience of storytellers. At the College of Journalism here, that is what you are. You are the storytellers of the country. You're going to be the future storytellers, and you are honing all your skills to do that. And storytelling is such a powerful thing. I last week had the privilege of listening to one of our speakers over here, Vijay, talking about a story that so affected me, even though I have been doing this work for 40 years. It was the story about a young woman who had got embroiled and got stuck in the system and was never taken out of it. So I see this value in storytelling because it connects us to each other. It explores the experiences of people and tells the pain and tells the sorrow and tells the joy of an individual. It makes us connect to each other. It makes us experience on a page what someone has been going through. It emphasizes repeatedly the issues. Again and again, we read about rape. Again and again, we read about torture. Again and again, we read about the behavior of the police, the non-responsiveness, the suppression, the oppression. And we keep on reading about it, and then we turn the page. But so, as storytellers, one should be paying attention to one's craft as well as to one's audience, and we should be paying attention to them. But it can't stop there. In a way, we at the Justice Report and I are also storytellers. But we are telling a story of a different kind. We are telling the story through data. Data? Data, you say, what is data? It's so boring, it's so cold, it's so dusty, it's so sterile. Numbers and numbers and numbers. How are we to understand that? But combine my story, which is the story of data, with your story, which is the story of ground reality. And we can get the power of the system, the power of the citizen to change the system. What does our data do? Our data tells things as they are and what they should be. As in German they say, the Sein and the Sollen, what should be and what is. That's the present. But it doesn't stop with the present. After you look at data that has gone before, you find that you can tell the past. The past is what shapes the future. You can make projections and you can tell what may happen in the future. By picking apart the data, you can find the pain points, the points where if you press that button, it would make all the lights come on. And by bringing it all together, you can look at the anatomy of a system. This is what the India Justice Report tries to do. And so, as I said, the reason why I'm so happy to be here at the Asian College of Journalism is that I can present you with some of the basic underpinning about systems, the systems that make up the justice delivery system. Before I begin telling you about the report, I want to point out to you as an empowered citizen that it is the bounden duty of the state to provide justice, and it does through the mechanisms of the state. For 75 years, policymakers, learned people, bureaucrats, commissions have all sat to change the system, but without the voice of the citizen over there. The India Justice Report is meant for the bureaucrat, for the media, but it is also meant for the citizen. And you, of course, are the vectors of that information. So that is why I think it is really important to understand systems, and this is the justice system. We have learned about education. We have learned about many other kinds of systems, food distribution, etc. But we don't take justice as being essential, as being central to governance. And if we do, it is only to complain. So I hope that the India Justice Report will give you a dimension from which you can pick and choose what is it that is relevant to you in your storytelling. So without more, I would like to go to this PowerPoint to tell you how it all began. Oh, well, here we are. So 6 organizations, sorry, I'm not very good with this. 6 organizations came together under the aegis of the Tata Trust. And now we are a kind of standalone project which uses the expertise and the specialized knowledge of the Center for Social Justice, Common Cause, CHRI, Daksh, TIS Prayas, and Vidhi, which all specialize in police, prisons, legal aid, judiciary, and our data partner, How India Lives, which helps us to crunch all the data and bring it all together. Now, the bold idea in this report was the idea that not only shall we assess and bring together all the siloed data, but we will also rank states. Now, this is an important part, and I will tell you more about it, because the notion of ranking by a civil society conglomerate or collective is not one that is knowledge, that is usual. We have the education people, ASAR, is it? ASAR, that brings out a report regularly. And we've seen the power of the report because it is regular and because it measures. If you measure, then you can estimate and you can see progress and stagnation. If you can't measure, it might as well not be there. So that is why we measure. So now we are, hang on, yeah, sorry. We are 3 reports down, and we are now presently working on the 4th report. Besides the reports that are national because they come together in a binder, but they are also state reports. Everything, our accent is on states, because states have got the money and the power and the mandate to deliver justice locally. And we are very keen that justice should be something that is available locally, like a primary health care center, like a school. Can anybody in this country, any governor in this country, say that we are not going to give you a primary health care center? So why can't they say, why do they get away with saying that you have to travel 150 miles to get justice, or to get a police station, or to get legal aid? So we also have state reports. And this one is about Tamil Nadu. So what did we do? We wanted to be fair to everybody. Some states are bigger than others. Some states have got more GDP than others. So basing ourselves firstly on population, we saw that there are 18 large states that have more than 10 million people, and then there are 7 small states that have got less than that. So we have these 18 states and small states. We also didn't rank, we wanted to rank everybody, but we could not rank some of them because there was no parity in comparison. These were states where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act has been there for a long time. And that has skewed the delivery of justice so much, so different it is now there, that we could not really measure them or compare them. We give the statistics, but we don't give them the ranks. And then we had the union territories, like Daman and Diu and Nagar Haveli and Pondicherry and these. Pondicherry is also a union territory. And we had those, and there the center is responsible for most of the money and the governance of the justice system. So we left those out. As I said, all the statistics are there for you to look at, if that is your interest. But the other states are ranked. So when you say that you're ranking states, everybody says, who are you? Why are you ranking? What do you mean? What are your sources? So we decided to use only government data. Now, only government data gives us the credibility to hold up a mirror, and nobody can say, well, you made up your own statistics. At the same time, it is a limitation. We can only measure those things that are available in government to measure. So somebody may say, but why have you not measured X or Y? Well, it simply is not there. So, or it is there, but it is not comparable to the other states. So we left that out. So these are the sources. These are national sources, but increasingly at the India Justice Report, we are also looking at state sources. And often there is not consistency. And one of the things that we are learning, and something that you should be interested and aware of, is that data is not consistent either in time or subject matter or even the numbers. And so how data is collected and what are we basing policy level interventions on if we are basing it on data which we cannot rely on or should not be relied on. But this is the data that we presently rely on. So what were we measuring? There are all sorts of subsystems within the justice system, and they are police, prisons, judiciary, legal aid. And lately, we've been looking at another justice delivery mechanism that is mandated to come to the aid of people who have been subject to human rights violations. So, but there are other subsystems which we have not yet measured because there is not sufficient data on which to measure them and to rank them. And that is forensics and prosecutions. This is information. You know, on the one hand, there is lots and lots of data, too much. On the other hand, there's less and less information because you are not collecting regularly information, say, about how many prosecutors are there, where are their offices, how many cases do they have, do they suffer from overload, how do they make their decisions to prosecute, not to prosecute. All of these things are brought out by data, but there's not enough of it for us to rank. So what do we look at? We look at the budgets, follow the money. How much money is there? How much money is given to judiciary, police, prisons, legal aid? I should tell you immediately that the police get the lion's share of the money, then the judiciary. Prisons are a sort of poor relative, and legal aid gets so little money that when we were making the bar chart, we had to draw a very thin line so that we could see it. Human resources, mainly we look at what are the ranks, where are the vacancies. Infrastructure, that means looking at how many courts there are, how many CCTVs there are, is there enough for people to work with. Workload. Workloads across the board are very heavy because staff vacancies are high. So you get a kind of coming together of everything, and prisons, for instance, becomes the dumping ground for all of the dysfunction that you see in the criminal justice system. Not enough judges, too many arrests, arrests that are not challenged, legal aid that is patchy, and in the end, you get a prison population which, as your chairman said, is vastly overcrowded with almost 77, 78% under trials. People who are not yet found guilty, but who are awaiting trial. And this is a public perception that we really have to change, that prisons, in our country at least, are not there for the guilty. They are there for the people who are not being served as they should be served by the justice system. Then we look at diversity to see, the way that I say it usually is to say a justice system must be able to demonstrate justice in itself. So if you are not representative, if your caste composition and your gender composition and your disability composition and your vulnerable group composition is not there, then you are not representative. If you are not representative, you cannot have the benefit of making decisions based on diverse experiences, but you will always do it according to your own identity. These are institutional biases. We look at bias, we look at how one woman was not treated properly, but there are whole institutions that indicate institutional bias, because now for how many years have we had no more than 10% women or 12% women in the police? It is changing, but is it changing fast enough? My data will show you how much it is changing or not changing, and where it might go in the future. Then, because we are now almost into our fourth report, we are able to show patterns and trends. So we have almost 109 indicators, and these change from time to time. I won't bore you with all that, but I will take you to, so you'll want to know who won and who lost. Okay. So who won and who lost? On a national grid, if you look at these three columns there, I hope you can read them, you will see that rankings change. Rankings change because the rankings are relative to each other. You may have done very well as a state, but if some state has done much better than you, your rank will go down. Or you may have really run away on 2 or 3 indicators, and your ranking will go up. But the basic thing, the basic pattern we have found is the top 5 states, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, tend to come in the top 5, 6, 7, in the top 1/3. Those that are the 1/3 at the bottom, they are also pretty consistent. Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Bihar, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, these are states that almost always come at the bottom. And the middle keep on changing in between. Nobody has had a tremendously dramatic increase. But you look at Maharashtra, it came first, then it came 11th. Now, naturally, that begs the question, why? Why did that happen? And I don't have the answers as a political economist, and I would not hazard a guess as a lawyer and a person who writes the India Justice Report. But I would like you to think about what happened in those years to governance in that state. Was it stable? Was it turmoil? Was it in turmoil? Does stability actually equate to progress or to stagnation? These are questions for you to explore, but for me to pose to you with the data sets that we have. Now, coming to prisons, which is the particular focus of this colloquium, this is Tamil Nadu was 10th in 2019, 6th in 2020, and 2022 it came first, right? Now, there are many reasons why it did this, and I will come to that. But the thing is, you can change. And the competition and seeing the whole picture together, because we bring these siloed data sets together. And let me tell you that even in the bureaucracy, the prisons data is barely seen by the legal aid people, or the legal aid data is barely seen by the police. So bringing it all together gives you a ready reckoner from which you can then use as an underpinning. So you have these tremendous changes in Tamil Nadu. And look at West Bengal. It's gone from 4 to 12 to 13. So what's going on in the governance of that state to make that happen? And you will see that the prisons also roughly follow the same pattern as the national overall ranking. The south almost always is better, then the middle is the kind of middle blue, and then those northern Hindi belt states seem to struggle to provide the kind of justice and the kind of prisons that really there ought to be. So these are the things we look at. I can go into very much detail about each of them, but I really don't want to because I have very little time and I want to show you some other stuff. So do you want to spend a moment looking at it? These are the things we measure. There are lots of other things you could measure, but these are what we do measure. And because the data is inconsistent, you are getting an aggregate picture of a state which may go from 2017 to 2022 or 23. It depends on who is putting out the data, how old the data is. And that is also a problem, that data remains in one place until somebody decides to update it. So some fast figures for the nation and for Tamil Nadu. Prisons have an occupancy rate. That is laid down. You're not supposed to have more than 100% people in a prison. But across the country, it wavers between overcrowding of 120 to 131%. Okay? And that is taking an average. In Tamil Nadu, that average is 77%. That is because Tamil Nadu has the most prisons in the country, 146 sometimes and 142, depending on what data set you are looking at. Now, that is the average. But some prisons and some sub-prisons, sub-jails, have got even as more as 400%. Now, prisons are supposed to be a place where you go because you may have done something wrong, and the loss of liberty is the final and only punishment. People should not have to go to prisons to get ill, or to be beaten up, or to be sexually assaulted, or prisons must not turn into a death sentence. And there are, in Tamil Nadu, far too many deaths in prisons over, if you look at 8 or 9 years data. And this is from other sources than IJR. You deprive a person of liberty, and that is it. You cannot do more. He is a citizen in prison, and you're supposed to look after him because he is in the custody of the state. So something is going wrong if that is happening. Now, the share of under trials, Mr. Sashi Kumar talked about that. This is less in Tamil Nadu than the national average, but it's still 60%. On the one hand, you're saying prisons are overcrowded. On the other hand, you are saying they're full of people who really haven't been tried or decided. So what should we do to get them out? It's not enough to say that this is how the state is. This is not the norm. You have to think of what is happening as prisons as a violation rather than be accepting it as the norm. Then you have, yep, okay. You see what I have to put up with? Okay. Staff vacancies, again, Tamil Nadu is in a better position, and one of the reasons why it came so high is that it reduced its staff positions very much. Now, the only thing I want to say about staff positions is there is custodial staff, there is care staff, and because prisons are supposed to be places of rehabilitation. My colleague, Mr. Murli Karnam, will talk about that, but I just want to say, keep that in mind. The model prison the model prison manual says that prisons have to be rehabilitative centers. We have to put these people back into society. Are we capable of putting them back in society? How many care staff are there? Your custodial staff are the most, your supervisory staff next. Nobody supervises them, and then we have the big problem of doctors. Across the country, there are 1,330 prisons. Sanctioned doctors are 1,200 and some. So you don't even have one doctor for a prison, even if you separated them out all over the country. And so you don't have enough doctors, enough care, enough medicines, and not only that, but you don't have enough vehicles or staff to take sick people into a care place, into a place of care. But you know that people who come into prisons are either coming in ill, maybe bringing in sickness, and certainly mental stress. How do you take care of that? Should you be bothered to take care of that? Is that something that we have all as a nation decided that we are not going to take care of, or it really doesn't matter? Finally, I won't go into this, and finally the budgets. As I told you, I've given you a broad picture. How much is spent on food? Most of it is spent on food. Nothing in our country has got enough budgets. No subsystem has got enough budgets because there isn't enough money. But then, for people who are inquiring journalists like yourself, what are we actually spending the money on? And what should we be spending the money on? These are the questions that come out. 90%, 80% of all the money across the board for the justice system is spent on salaries. Right? So that leaves very little money for things like training, upskilling, grading. We found that training, 1%, 2% is spent on training. So who are you getting into the system, and how capable are they of looking after what they're supposed to be looking after in the system? So I leave you with all of that, and just to say that I don't want to leave you unhappy. I don't want to leave you sad. So you should know that there is an effort always to improve things. Maybe for someone like me, it's too slow. Maybe it could be better. How do you start thinking about doing more with less and doing it much more proactively? But even with all of those caveats, I say to you that, look, Karnataka, on 60 indicators that we could look at, 43 of them they improved in. And in this way, police, prisons, judiciary, legal aid. How did they improve? How much did they improve? And you see that states that are striving to improve and states that are really not doing so well. Okay? Interestingly, some of the smaller states who should be doing much better, in fact, don't reach standards that the bigger states have done. Now, there's lots and lots of questions that this will come forward after my colleagues have spoken, but I think that I have conveyed to you what I really mean by us together as citizens with power, taking to the highest in the land, like the Supreme Court, like the Prime Minister, like the Cabinet Minister, like your chief ministers, our view that will change the conversation and make it a people's conversation rather than a sequestered conversation of the few. Thank you.
One point that I've been facing, are we ready to put the offender back to the society on rehabilitation? The reverse, is the society ready to take him back with a little amount of empathy or sympathy? The stigma still grows day by day. And what are we, not me, because I'm on the other side of the desk, what are we others going to do about that? And is the IJR trying to take any statistics from the society about their views on prisoners being released? Because as probation officers in Tamil Nadu, we develop as aftercare officers for about 3 years. We give them some sort of counseling, guidance, try to get some financial assistance. In any other external agency where we go for financial assistance, the first surprise, oh my God statement is, you are bringing a prisoner. How do we trust them? That's the first place where they lose half their confidence. Can something be done about that? No. It's collective responsibility.
No.
Definitely not. See, madam, all my questions are
You're
to
right.
the generally, not to madam or sir or anybody here.
You're right. Of course, you're right. And Murli, for instance, and Vijay has, I think, the same experiences, especially Vijay, because he's probably much better qualified to.
Sir is doing wonders.
Exactly. And I think that in that lies your answer. There are few people who are striving, like yourself, to change the conversation. I mean, this conversation has not changed even in the most so-called developed societies. So, of
Sadly.
course, they are always going to be disadvantaged. But then prisoners' associations, probation officers' associations, etc., have been able to move the needle a little bit. Please make yourself comfortable. Thank you.
One more request to Sir, Chairman Sir. For the next such meeting on Colloquium on prisons, please do invite a sizable number of prison officers.
Just while the next question is found, speaking of society, there is a law that bans the employment of child domestic workers, right? Now, many of us, our relatives, our bosses, our juniors, they continue to employ children. So there's still a law for it, right? So I think the IGR is looking to show the mirror to the government, which is responsible for the upholding of their own benchmarks and mandates. When possible, we would love to do a survey of public sentiment on prisoners or those who are accused of committing crimes. But I think you're quite right. But because I have looked at very closely, and I hope Mukta ma'am will also touch on that issue of juveniles, child domestic workers in Delhi homes, in Bombay homes, in Calcutta homes, in Madras homes, everywhere, every city. So that hypocrisy is something that we should question on not just weekends, but every day.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Khushi Yadav. I'm from the Asian College of Journalism. Ma'am, you mentioned that the prison systems and the police barely sees the legal aid data, and the legal aid also barely sees the police data. So can you please shed some light on that? Why does that happen?
The, the system, the bureaucracy is such that a great deal of data is generated. It is only in the last 10 years that this data in like the form of the NJDG has found itself in the public because of the technology, and a great deal of detail is in there. But this data is usually siloed to the department. The data is used for monitoring. कि तुमने ये किया है कि नहीं? Have you done this or have you not done that? And how much money has been spent on this event or that event? But it's not yet being used holistically, and the bureaucrat in charge, right from the constable at the bottom, right to the top, is answerable to a ladder. Yeah? So he's concerned to satisfy that ladder. But and so the data comes to headquarters, and then it's headquarters data. It might go to finance because money has to be given. But there's no time, there's no culture to pass that along to legal aid, which is just as busy. So it stays siloed. So that is one of the really strong reasons why, even when we are working as NGOs, if I'm working on policing, I'm only looking at legal aid to the extent that is relevant to me for that 5 minutes. But here is an umbrella of information that says, okay, in my state, this is how these 4 pillars are functioning, and how they are interconnected and interrelated, and how the effect of one is having an effect on another. Correlations are there. So that is why we did it that way. But the reasons for why this remains siloed, the silos may be breaking down a little bit, but I think that both the culture and the physical reality of work and workload is still not allowing it to become into one sort of flowing mesh. Some time ago, we were in Tamil Nadu, actually, and we met the chief secretary. And the chief secretary had 3 or 4 copies lying. She had a copy on her desk, and she had 3 or 4 copies lying on her shelf. Home secretary, sorry. And she said, whenever people walk through my door, I give it to them. So she's trying to make that effort.
So my name is Utkarsh, and my question is that a disproportionate number of population in prison comes from marginalized castes and minority communities, and much of it also has to do with the policing attitude, and because police after all also comes from the same society that conditions them into believing and having certain attitudes when it comes to these communities. And you mentioned that most of the budget goes on to salaries and food and all that. So basically there is not much of training that happens with police system as well. So is there anything specific that you observed during these few years that the reporting that India Justice Report is done with regards to, like, is there anything that states are able to do differently when it comes to this specific issue of marginalized population being more into prisons?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 things that you wake in my mind. You are right about everything. Your comments are exactly right. Everybody knows this. Now, but if you are giving only 1% and sometimes less for training, and I'm talking about police now, training for, training facilities are poor. Training facilities are not adapted to the need. A lot of prison officials are trained in police academies. So they then get a security mindset, not a rehabilitation mindset, right? The training of the police themselves is hindered by not having permanent staff not having teaching staff. So they are taught by somebody who's their grandfather, or who's come in from, who's in a bad posting, or is an inconvenient fellow. So you stick him in a training department. It's a travesty that you don't have people who are mandated to give you safety and security, but who are unable to understand it and who come in with biases and then leak those biases into the culture itself. You were talking about the judgment, and I was talking about it last night to Justice Gupta. I think that the justice made a mistake in saying that caste should be struck off in the registers. See, that is the way that we know who is there. Now, there may be a very good reason. He's the Chief Justice of India. He must be knowing what he's doing, so there might be a reason for it. He's trying to eliminate it. But caste is a reality. What the judgment was about was opportunity. Because you are a Dalit, you cannot cook. Because you are a Dalit, you cannot draw water. That has to be eliminated. But the point of your identity is a point that we need to find out to know whether you are discriminated against or not. You take that out, and we have eliminated something or are pretending not to look at a reality. This has happened with religion. After some time, the composition, after 2014, the composition, religious composition of police is no longer there in the data. So I don't know whether it is reflected, whether it reflects there are more minorities, less minorities, in which states they are, which states are not taking them. Caste is a very important identifier to show whether democratic representation is actually being reflected within the system that is ordered to rule us, or govern us. I don't like to say rule us, govern us. You are there as a trustee. Are you representative or not? Madam Justice, if you have something to illuminate that with when you speak, it's a matter of concern to me what will happen.
Add one thing. Just want to give an example that how policy making or law making can have an perhaps unintentional extreme adverse effect. When Bihar enacted the prohibition law, what ended up happening instantly was those communities that were in any case into making liquor on their own, country liquor, suddenly they ended up in jails, and there was an overrepresentation. But I'll just stop by saying that these are structural issues plaguing the society. The IJR or all our partners are trying to open the justice system's structural deficiencies in regards to its own mandates. And of course, diversity is a very big part. You may refer to the Common Causes report called Status of Policing in India, which did a perception survey of the police and how it views women, Muslims, and other marginalized communities.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir. Here. My name is Shreya Singh, and I'm from Asian College of Journalism. My question is, ma'am, you mentioned about distribution of money, and you put up the very valid question, where does the money go? So when it comes to Indian administration, the one answer that boils down, can we say it's a corruption that plays a 50% of the role? If yes, then welfare of the inmate has been compromised. So instead of focusing on distribution, should our concern be towards corruption?
Of course, everybody should be worried about corruption. The courts are worried about corruption. The government should be worried about corruption. I can't measure corruption, right? I'm in the business of measuring how these 4 pillars and more actually perform. Of course, there would be much more money flowing through the system legitimately if there were no corruption. People have studied corruption and found that, like the proverbial rotten fish, it starts from the head. What is used in elections, what is used in giving favors, all of that. You read it in the newspapers. Beyond saying that, I'm afraid I can't, of course people should be looking at corruption, but it's the tackling of it. Who has the mandate to tackle it? Who has the agencies to tackle it? And who has the intention and desire to tackle it? That has been deeply, deeply studied.